The division from within America is a regular subject these days, and almost sometimes it seems like it's something that's fueled by the media. From January 6th to the more recent elections, the divide has never been so more amplified, as some even talk of civil war. As a veteran who's seen the ugly side of war before, it's terrifying to think that there are those who wish this type of warfare within our own backyard. But what can be done? How do we take a stand against ignorance and the will to do harm by eroding the foundations on which America was founded? One such American, the first of the Iraq War generation to serve in Congress, has shown his own way through answering the call, not only to serving his country through military service, but also within the halls of Capitol Hill. Join us as we talk with former Congressman and Undersecretary of the Army, Patrick Murphy, on Veteran Success Story. This week on Veteran Success Story, I had the opportunity to sit down with Congressman Patrick Murphy. I had known the bullet points before talking with the former congressman, but really it was in delving into the research once I got that hard yes and we scheduled everything in that I started delving into everything that he was involved in. And man, I just have to say this episode contains a heck of a lot of good information, and so much so to where I'm going to have a lot of links posted into the description link just to talk about. I mean, he's got a new podcast out, Warrior Money, to where he's helping out with that financial end of things. A lot of the stuff that he's brought forward with the Wharton Business School and some of the business information that he's learned along the way that has helped him, he's imparting onto other people. It's really what I see as the mark of a true leader, is taking that knowledge and offering it up as that mentorship. And that's something that I was really excited to have him as a guest, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Today on the show, we have joining us former Congressman and Undersecretary of the United States Army, Patrick Murphy. It's good to have you here. Man, going through the accolades when I was preparing for the episode and everything, I knew the first Iraq war vet to serve in Congress, and it was the Undersecretary of the Army, and then all of a sudden when I start pulling it apart, there's taught at West Point, and I'm just like, holy crap, who did I get on this show? But thank you so much for coming on.
No, well, thanks so much for doing what you do for our brothers to veterans. Let me tell you, I've been over backwards for our fellow veterans. I mean, they've done so much for our country, our nation, during a defining moment. So to come on your podcast, it's the least I could do. I appreciate you, being one of being one of your first guests too. It's an honor, and looking forward to the conversation, brother.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things, though, is that I've seen throughout, and what really drew me to have you on as a guest is that you put yourself out there. You're one of those veterans that's out there. You're not just putting out some rhetoric or something like that. You're actually practicing what you preach, and you really are. You're involved with the community every step of the way, and it's really been exemplary through, going from service, going to Congress, going to and being involved in your community, and you're still doing stuff. Matter of fact, you had said something prior. You just started a finance podcast?
Yep, I'm partnering with Yahoo Finance. We created a new podcast that we push out called Warrior Money. So Warrior Money is to educate our brothers and veterans, current active troops, to let them know, one, about fiscal discipline, if they want to get in entrepreneurship, if they want to better invest their money, so they don't get taken advantage of. Because listen, we all know it. There's a lot of barracks advice that folks get. Some are good, some are bad. And we just want to make sure that we take care of folks to let them know what options that are out there. If they want to go to places like get their MBA, what that means. I teach, part-time at the Wharton Business School, right? And about 10% of our incoming class every year are veterans or folks who served in government. So, we're just trying. It's me and my partner Dan Coons. We just launched it this past week. Our first guest was Admiral Bill McRaven. As you know, he needs no introduction. Navy SEAL, SOCOM commander who took out Bin Laden and finally brought him to justice. Wrote the book "Make Your Bed." I mean, he's just,
Yep.
He's the man. And so he launched that, and it's on all the channels. Obviously Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. So, and then obviously the website, Yahoo Finance. But we're trying to get out there So if you and others have ideas on how to share it or be involved, always welcome. I always say, God gave me 2 ears, but one mouth for a reason.
Absolutely. And that's great that you're doing that, because I mean that is really one of the things that I see in the community and stuff, is that finances, they're not taught in our public schools. They're not, or the very minimal. And it's almost like something that gets glossed over. And then, like what you're saying, there's so much information out there, but also disinformation. So I mean, you're a very reputable source, and to be able to put that out there, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I grew up very blue collar, right? So I'm still paying I still have student loans, but I grew up in a row house in Northeast Philadelphia. My father was enlisted in the Navy, then was a cop in Philly for 22 years. My mom was a secretary, so I was the youngest of three. And so, listen, I'm blessed, But we lived in a row house. I did have a gun pulled on me 3 times before I even turned 18, and things like that. But like, I didn't understand about what it means when you say make your money work for you, right? I didn't understand what investments was. I didn't understand like credit card, like just because you have a credit card, you know, doesn't mean that you should use it and max it out, right? And that's like the worst thing you do. It's like digging a hole and keep digging deeper, right? So, we're just trying to teach folks how important it is to have fiscal discipline, how important it is to be smart with your money, and not make the same mistakes as I did. Like when I was in Congress, like Bill, I'm blessed. Like taught at West Point, 2 combat deployments, came back, ran for office, and one for the U.S. Congress. But I'll tell you, I was one of the least wealthy members of Congress. I mean, I had like a negative net worth because I had a home, a mortgage. I'm in D.C. I have a, apartment. I'm paying for $1,500 a month. Like, and I remember being like, how am I like the poorest rich person in America, right? Like, and so, now, you fast forward, a little over 15 years later, and I'm like, hey man, my net worth is great. Like, I'm investing, and more importantly, I'm trying to teach other folks what I wish I would have known 15, 25 years ago, or, Frank, when I was 19 and didn't know. And that wasn't to say I did listen to great advisors. I mean, I had this one captain, he was a Captain Joe O'Donnell, and I was doing ROTC, and he was an Army officer, but he used to say to us, do not go buy a new car. Yes, you're going to make $27,000 a year as a second lieutenant, but don't go buy a new car right away because it's going to set you back, right? And so that I did listen, and I took it to heart. But there's other things I wish I would have known about making your money work for you, and why it's important to have like your network is your net worth, about transitions and other things. So looking forward to chatting about it with you
That's
and others.
See, and that's the giving back part and learning from each other. That's, I don't know why we see so many people out there beating their head against a wall, to where it's like this information's out there. All you need to do, especially, I mean, we live in the day and age of information, to where this stuff is at your fingertips. Don't be, follow somebody reputable and stuff. Don't follow the quick buck, because, it does exist out there, but it's so far and few in between. Like you're saying, make your money work for you in there. I want to back up a little bit there, though, and talk about, your upbringing and stuff, because part of this thing in the show is how can veterans become more involved in whatever they're interested in, and seeing you with finance now, Warren professor, your background within politics and stuff. I mean, there is so much to unpack through this, but where could there be maybe some commonalities and stuff? Where did you come from? Like, let's the rise of Patrick Murphy. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, listen, I've been very blessed in that I'm a third generation veteran. My grandfather served in the Pacific with the Navy during World War II, enlisted Navy man, came back and drove tractor trailers, right? It was a Teamster for decades. And that's how, the Murphy family got by. And, I had 2 uncles that served in Vietnam. My dad served during Vietnam as a Navy veteran, enlisted. I'm named after a Vietnam veteran, Will, who gave the ultimate sacrifice. His name was Patrick Ward. And I really, talk about giving back. Like, I look at the Vietnam generation, which the reality of it is that they were not treated the right way. Our country was so divided at that time. And we didn't, as a nation, we learned from it, but we didn't separate the war from the warrior, right? Meaning that, it wasn't our troops that decided to go into Vietnam or not, or Iraq or not, or Afghanistan or not. It's the political leadership in our country. And so they just do the job that's given to them, right? When I was in Baghdad with the 82nd Airborne Division, right? I didn't choose to go to Baghdad. The Army said do it, and I saluted and said, Captain Murphy, reporting for duty, and we got after it. So, that generation of Vietnam veterans from the jump, they could have sat home and said, "This, we weren't treated the right way when we came home." But they were the first ones, Will, that said, "Welcome home, brother. welcome home sister. And that really sat with me, right? So like I always try to recognize them and say, listen, I'm trying to pay for it like you all did to make it right. Um, so again, youngest of three, my sister's a school teacher, public schools. My brother was an Air Force veteran, was a coordinator for search and rescue with the Air Force down at Tyndall Air Force Base and elsewhere. And then with me, like, that's youngest of three. My mother, though, Will, was a Catholic nun. So from the jump, I joked that, she dumped Jesus for Jack Murphy. She doesn't like that version. She said, I left a comment and then with my father. I said, yeah, Mom, but the story doesn't work that well. But no matter, and you were gracious in your intro, like, yeah, I've been blessed in that, I helped lead the Army as a 32nd Secretary of the Army. I was in Congress, etc. But I will always be a disappointment to my mother. Well, the fact that I'm not a Catholic priest, a parish priest, it doesn't matter. My mom, I was like her last, her last chance. I was the 1987 Altar Boy of the Year. I am a devout Catholic. I do raise my kids Catholic. They go to Catholic school, but it is what it is. But I've been blessed, and our community and our country has opened up so many doors for me, and I'm just trying to always give back as much as I can.
I mean, it really is the land of opportunity, and isn't that what we all kind of strive to do? Is we're all always striving to live up to that expectations of the parents, and
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
seems to be one of those things. And ultimately, sometimes it aligns, but ultimately, you got to find your own path.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have imposter syndrome and things of that nature. But, for me, it was, I will say the great thing about my family was that we had that row house mentality and that you take care of the people on your left and your right. You take care of your neighbors. My brother and I were entrepreneurial. We used to deliver newspapers in the morning. We shoveled when it snowed. We shoveled steps for money. But my mom and dad were quick to say, go shovel Mrs. Deegan's steps. She was an elderly lady. Her husband passed away. He was a Navy veteran. We didn't charge her money, right? It was like you do those type of things, and then you get, the younger couples that would pay you because the dad didn't want to, do it. He didn't have kids yet, right? But that's what we did. I mean, I was a cook at Pizza Hut. I waited tables, at Olive Garden and Perkins Family Restaurant. I was a busboy at an Italian restaurant before that. Like, and so like this, man, I've been hustling it, but it gave me this work ethic. So when I was in the Army, when I'm working 20-hour days, it didn't feel like foreign, right? It wasn't like, yeah, okay, we got up at dark 30, we PT'd, we showered, we got moving, and we did literally do more before 9 a.m. than most folks do all day.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, like being in the 82nd, and seeing the different backgrounds where people came from. It was always either the people that came from a farm, or that the middle class, the blue collar family and stuff. Man, they really would put forth the work. Um, Going from that, like, I mean, into the military end of things. Well, I mean, really first community college, and then uh, did you end up? How did that go? Community college and then you went towards law school, and then ended up in the JAG Corps.
Yeah, I went to Bucks County Community College, and then I transferred to King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So I was full-time community college, age 17, 18. And then I joined my brother at King's College. It's a small Catholic college in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It's one of those Holy Cross schools, and there's 7 Holy Cross schools across the country. The most famous one, frankly, is the University of Notre Dame. So it's Notre Dame's sister school. This one's called King's College in Wilkes-Barre, but there's the University of Oregon. I'm sorry, University of Portland and Portland, Oregon. There's Stonehill. There's a bunch of them. And so I was there, and then my roommate and I, we just joined the Army. We joined the Army at age 19 and found out all about Army ROTC. And this was back in 1993, and we went to basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then advanced camp at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, now Fort Liberty. But that was a thing, and for me, yeah, I mean, I was still hustling. Like, I'm in the Army. I had earned a 2-year scholarship, but I was still a ski instructor on the weekends. I was a captain in a hockey team. I was in student government. Like, I was finding my way. And I learned in college and the Army, what that taught me what the discipline was. I was always a hard worker, but I didn't work smart, right? So it's, you still got to work hard, but you got to work smart. And so are you thinking strategically? Are you thinking critically? And so that's what I try to impart on my students when I taught at West Point, when I teach at the Wharton Business School. Like that's what I try and guide folks, or when I mentor young Americans.
Yeah, big picture thinking and long term. Yeah, create that whole picture there.
Yep.
Now, I know looking at some of the history and stuff, I see when you were in Iraq, I mean, you're serving as JAG Corps, but I mean, your unit, your brigade ended up losing 19, and I heard stories of you hosing out like the Humvees, and that's not like a typical. I know someone who also served in JAG Corps, but I know that's during the invasion end of things. So I mean, that is like you are hustling and doing everything out there. I mean, that just sounds between, I'm sure working with the generals on that end because that's what they're doing. There's SOFA agreements and there's ROE, and then you're looking at specific situations and through the ARs. I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I was lucky because the invasion of Iraq was my second deployment. My first one was to Bosnia. So I was
Okay.
in Tuzla, Bosnia, and people forget about Bosnia. I mean, that we stopped as an American military. We stopped the worst ethnic cleansing in Europe since World War II. They were
Yeah.
killing tens of thousands of people just because they were Muslim, right? And load them up on basically bus loads of folks, and they would ship them off, and they would pull off the side of the road in towns like Srebrenica, and make them leave the bus and execute them on the side of the road just because they're Muslim, right? And in America,
Mhm.
we forget, like, we have millions of Muslims that live in our country. I mean, we're all about religious freedom. Like, I'm a devout Catholic, but we have all these great faiths: Jews, Christians, agnostic people, atheists, etc. But still, um, so I did that deployment. I served under General Petraeus at the time. Our ground forces commander with the 25th Infantry Division, our unit in Bosnia was then Colonel Mark Milley, who became General Mark Milley and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I was there, and then I came back, and then was part of the, was reassigned with the 82nd, was part of the invasion. And part of it was, we were responsible for Al Rashid, Baghdad, which is the largest district, about 1.5 million Iraqis in Baghdad, Sunni and Shia. But we were a brigade combat team, right? We were the second brigade, the 82nd, so there's 3,500 of us. So it wasn't like when we had the lead convoys, it wasn't like, well, Captain Murphy, you're a JAG. I mean, I was taught as an infantry officer. I'd say you're trained as an RTC, and so whether it was leading convoys or doing what we had to do, or you know being on top of the roof, at our Fort Op, because we didn't have any generals. I mean, our highest rank was one colonel, full-bird colonel, but it was quick and fast and 138-degree heat, and it was
Yep.
tough. But I had the opportunity to serve in the company heroes, and it changed my life for the better.
It sounds 110% like the 82nd Airborne. I mean, it's like, hey, we need a slot, and someone jumps to, or someone gets pushed into that spot there. But
Well, it's funny. Well, when I joined the Army in 19, though, I will say, I did say, because my uncle, my mom's twin brother, served in Vietnam, and he was 101st in Vietnam. He's also 82nd Airborne Division. So when I joined the Army, I said, I want to be an airborne ranger, right? That's why I went to airborne school, air assault school. I was training up for ranger school when 9/11 happened. But for me, I had to work my way to get into the 82nd and be that person. So to me, it was like when I was there, I felt blessed that I had that incredible opportunity to serve. And I was picked over other captains that volunteered to go, right? And so to me, it was like something that, like I said, changed my life. To serve in the company of those heroes, and to serve, I still keep in touch with them. I was just in Dallas, Texas the other day, with my private first class, Juan Arevalo. And Juan, his nickname was RV, but he never met his father. He joined the Army. He was making $16,000 a year as a private first class. And he was like, Captain Murphy, he goes, I'm the richest person in Baghdad. I'm like, yeah, RV, how's that? And he goes, do you know that this is tax free? So I'm really making not 16,000 a year. I'm making $24,000 a year. And I don't know if they give me free MREs to eat. And it was just like, but that's the spirit of these warriors that you and I had the opportunity to serve with.
so going from serving in Iraq, serving in the 82nd Airborne, and then transitioning over to the civilian side, what led you to run for Congress?
You know what? I was an independent my whole life. So it wasn't like I was a Democrat or Republican, right? I voted both parties. I voted always for the person. But I remember being in Iraq, and they were trying to cut our combat pay back in 2003. And again, this hazardous duty pay, it's not a lot of money, especially as a captain. I was making, I think close to $38,000 a year. But to cut the pay for my troops, like the private first class, the special, like it irritated me that that's what the Congress was doing. And I realized that in Congress, where it used to be of every 5 members of Congress after World War II, 4 out of 5 were veterans. Now it is less than 1 out of every 5. So, to me, it was like, all right, I'm gonna go do this. And so I got involved in political public service. I ran, I won. I only won by 0.6%. I was outspent by over $3 million, but We won in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So it's one of those swing districts. And then I won again. But, it wasn't just about me winning. I was then trying to get other folks, to run. So, I'm really proud that my best friend in the Army became my best friend in Congress, and now we're business partners together. And he was a Republican, I was a Democrat. His name's Tom Rooney. And to me, it's important to let people know that our veterans are civic assets, and they're more willing to be independent than any other political party, and they're more willing to put our country first. And that's what our nation needs right now. Not people are going to be so partisan, just to fight.
That's one of the biggest things too, is that I saw right there. Number one, veterans seem to be bipartisan in a lot of stuff. They cross that aisle quite often. And not just that, but one of the stats that, I don't know how they came to this stat, but I looked at it. It makes sense to me. Maybe not as high as I saw, but um, that a veteran serving in Congress, which again, like you said, there's a very small amount, whereas back in the 70s was much higher. Um, but it's declined over time. But a veteran income is something like 45% more effective, like more policies, more work done within
Yep.
Congress, which is just, they're taking that same military mindset of getting stuff done, putting in those routines, putting in those structures, but making a difference. And I think that's one of the biggest things, that we all have that purpose.
Yeah.
But then when it's able to be put to use like that, they don't let it go to waste.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it goes in the tradition of our veterans, right? Whether it was George Washington, who was our first commander in chief, whether it was John F. Kennedy, who was a World War II veteran who came back and became a congressman, then a senator, and then the president. John McCain, who always put the country first. They call him a maverick for a reason, because he would buck his party and buck folks, that he would always, do what he thought was right. And that's what we're missing most in Washington right now, and that's that moral courage. People who will buck their party if need be to make a difference in people's lives for the good of the order, and not do things that are just what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, like so really, and what we're talking about here is focusing on the issue instead of the politics behind it. And really that's probably one of the best advices that I could say is for the people on the Hill now, and the people that just got elected in this turnover. Is like, look guys, this country it's hurting right now, and there's never been more divide. Why get involved, but like, look at the issues. Let's solve
Yep,
the issues together.
yep, yep. Yeah, and so that's what I tried to do when I was in there. Raising the minimum wage. Writing the bill that repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because we kicked out 13,000 troops, because that's who, you know, it was crazy. I mean, if we should kick people out if there's misconduct, whether they're gay or straight, but that kick them out just because who they love was crazy. But also things like, I got a veteran cemetery for 350,000 veterans in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's called the Washington Crossing National Veteran Cemetery. It's one of the newest VA cemeteries we have, and it's just doing right by our brothers to veterans, and then partnering with people like Tim Walls, who's my roommate at the time, for the post 9/11 GI Bill. And right now, there's about 800,000 young Americans in colleges and universities using the GI Bill right now because of what we did. So, it was about pulling points to the board for our brothers to veterans and their families, and the American people.
Oh man, we got two or three things right out of that right there that we could talk about. I mean, that was to go back to the first one, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy repeal. I was actually in when all of that went down, and we had just come off of a combat tour to where we had one of the guys that we were in with. He wasn't in the same platoon as me, but he was very clearly homosexual. Nobody had an issue with it whatsoever. Like, there was never, it was just like stay in your lane kind of thing, and nobody had a problem with it. And then it's repealed. Things changed on that end, but nothing actually changed on what was going on at the ground level. Nobody
Yeah, and
cares of that.
that was my whole argument. When I was on the Armed Services Committee and on a personnel subcommittee, and then we had people testify like, "Oh my God, if you do this, there's going to be, you know, gay rapes in the barracks," and it's like, what? I'm like, we have heterosexual, we have women serve with us like this, and we have the UCMJ. In fact, women are safer in the military than they would be in college campuses, right? So it's like, come on, man. Like, we have the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we have Army regulations, like our government, we put a special trust and confidence in these young Americans. We put an M4 assault rifles in their hand. Like, we got to trust them. And if they're in love with someone back home, we don't care if they're gay or straight. Can they do their job? Can they kick a door down? Can they, help people out, and not get involved in who they're writing, letters home to?
Yeah, exactly. That's my thoughts exactly on all of
Yeah.
that. Um, what was the man? So we went from, I mean, and the GI Bill stuff there with Tim Waltz. That's one of the best things that I see. You know, it's one of the things that I used and utilized and used to my favor like quite a bit. And really, it's something that I should have looked at more when I first got out and used it within that transitionary period, because it really gives you kind of that reset time. You know, you're acclimating to how civilians around you and
Yep.
stuff are, which a lot of the combat vets, we might have a little issue with that just because of that world of things. The world of the infantry is very, very clean cut, very black and white, and very abrasive at times. But everybody there, I really feel, they have their heart in the right place. It's just it's a different, I guess it's a warrior culture almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, like, it always looks easy retrospectively, right? So just like the repeal of domestic law looked easy, but, we kicked out 13,000 troops. It was like 2 or 3 a day. And I had members of Congress that were veterans that they basically said, Murphy, you're going to have blood in your hands. Like, I mean, they were pissed. And even though it was bipartisan and all that stuff, but, we had not even had a hearing in it. And, in over a decade since it was implemented. So to me, it was crazy town. And I was willing to, fight for it because it was the right thing to do, even though I'm straight and all that. But on the GI Bill, again, another thing where, our unemployment rate of veterans, of post 9/11 veterans like you and I, was 16% at the time. 16%. So when you look at every year we transition out about 200,000 troops, that's tens of thousands, like, right? Like you gotta do what you can. So that GI Bill was incredibly important. And I think, well, the thing I'm most proud about it is when you look at the numbers, we're investing in these young men and women who served our nation. They are on average will average a 3.2 GPA. They will major in STEM. They will go out and do great things, and it's a great thing. It's a win-win for our veterans, for those colleges and universities that want to have leaders of character in them as students, and then for our nation, because they were going to be civic assets for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. That's so. Then you, man, it goes from there. Is there a break or something, or some you got approached to be? Well, there looks like you were actually the Secretary of the Army for acting Secretary of the Army for a small period, and then Undersecretary under the Obama administration. How exactly? I mean, they just came to you and said, "Hey, like jump on in here." Like, how did that all come to be?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I had done these bills, like the repeal of donation hotel and the post-time GI Bill, and then there was a wave election, meaning 63 seats, 63 Democrats lost their seats in the Tea Party wave of 2010. I was one of them. I lost by single digits, and so the party bosses, party said to me like, "Hey, Pat, you barely lost. Next year, 2 years now, it's gonna be presidential year. Run again." I was like, "Hey, man, no, I'm good. I did 4 years in Congress. I put a lot of points on the board. I'm good." And then President Obama, who I love, like he said to me, "Hey, Patrick, can you stay in and work for Secretary Gates as a special assistant or whatever?" And I said, "Hey, sir, like I love Secretary Gates. I love you and I love our country." I said, "But if you want me to serve in some capacity, you got to give me." I would serve in some type of portfolio. I don't need a job. I'm going back home to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So if something comes up, you want me to do it, I'll do it. But I don't need to be, I don't need to carry someone's bag, right? I was like, I'm good, sir. Thank you. And and a few years later, I saw President Obama. He's like, "Hey, Murph, like, I'm my last 2 years as the president. Like, I got to finish strong, make some changes at the Pentagon. I need you to go help lead the Army." And he goes, "I'd like you to serve as the Undersecretary of the Army. It's opening up." And I'll be honest with you, Will. Even though I was in armed services, even though I served in the military, I didn't exactly know what the Undersecretary of the Army was. So basically, it's like the COO of the Army. I mean, I literally Googled it. The org chart of the Army, Department of the Army headquarters. So when I saw it was the COO, and then I needed assistant secretaries, et cetera. But I went back and said, "Yep, yes, sir. I'll go do this and help you finish strong." And we did it. We hit recruitment goals for the first time in 5 years. We got after it, and that's really important because it's America's varsity team, and of our million soldiers in the Army, the majority of our soldiers in the Army, unlike the other services, are actually in a reserve component, meaning National Guard or Army Reserve. And so when governors call 911, they're calling our Army National Guard, and listen, when the president calls 911, it's the 82nd Airborne Division, right? Or Marines. But to make sure that these young Americans had the opportunities that I had, and even more, and to go lead them was important. So that's why when I'm sure you reference earlier, there's a Washington Post story that said that I was the soldier secretary because I would go out there when I would go visit. I go PT with troops and I just talk to them. And whatever they were doing that day on a workout, I would do. I mean, sometimes I was flipping tires and putting the troops over my back and carrying them, but doing fireman carries. But, other times it was just like a run and push-ups. But I was getting out there, sweating with them, and letting them know, like, hey, man, we all do the same thing in the Army. We all have to shoot, move, and communicate. And that's what I try to tell people about communicating. That's why I'm on, your podcast. That's why I launched that Yahoo Finance Warrior Money podcast. That's why I do Fox News and Fox Business. I let people know, like, what I've learned and try and pay it forward. Because they say, like, listen, a wise man will learn from his mistakes, but a really wise man and woman will learn from other people's mistakes. And that's what I'm trying to get people to know, like they can learn from my mistakes and others that I've seen, and give them the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I mean, we both got books behind us for a reason, right?
That's right.
So from there, moving, I mean, and this is all, I guess, vested in between all of this is you had MSNBC, you show up regularly on Fox News stuff. You're doing stuff within the entrepreneurial area. You want to go into a little bit more about what, and where your path led and some of either the pitfalls along the way and where your learning points were?
Sure. Yeah. Listen, when I left the Army JAG Corps after 5 years and before in Congress, I'm a lawyer by trade. I mean, I was a soldier at 19, but then, eventually the Army company to go to law school and went on to go teach at West Point, et cetera. And then 9/11 happened and deployed. But, I tried a bunch of cases. I tried terrorists and stuff like that. Right. So when I did those things, and then when I did them and then like getting out, I, to me, what was important was the ability to give back and to solve problems. So when you talk about entrepreneurship, half the veterans after World War II came back and started their own small business, creating incredible brands, iconic brands like Nike, the largest sports apparel company in the world. Bill Bowerman earned a Silver Star with the 10th Mountain Division over in Europe. Came back home. What did he do? Like a lot of veterans, he became a track coach at a high school, then got the track coach job at the University of Oregon. Who was the student athlete? Phil Knight. It was doing Army ROTC. They started Nike in the back of the car. It's now the largest sports apparel company in the world, right? And, you look at Comcast, obviously the largest media company in the world, World War II Navy era veteran in Ralph Roberts, the largest retailer in the world. So Nike, largest sports apparel company, largest retailer in the world is Walmart. Sam Walton, World War II veteran, came back at age 41, started at Walmart, right? So when I say like half the veterans start doing small business, creating these global iconic brands, that's awesome, right? We should be very proud about that. But our generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, it's less than 5%. So access to capital is a big deal. So my partners and I, we've invested about $75 million already, assets under management, in 63 mostly veteran-owned companies that are dual-use companies that have a private sector use and public sector use. So that's what we get after. That's what we do. It's not charity; it's business. But some of them are doing phenomenal, and I can elaborate if need be.
Yeah, hey, that's the VC world. Is there any one in particular that you want to, I guess, talk about or give a shout out to?
Yep. I mean, there's like veterans like Blake Hall, and Blake Hall was, Vanderbilt ROTC. Blake Hall was part of the Ranger Regiment, and Blake Hall, is a great American. And he came back from Iraq. He went to Harvard Business School. He then had this idea called ID.me. And ID.me, we've invested in it. My partners and I invested in it when it was the PowerPoint side and throughout. And that company's worth about $2.7 billion right now, right? And again, if you go into, Home Depot or Lowe's, you get the veterans discount. Well, it's ID.me in the private sector that verifies you're a veteran, or an educator for an educator discount, or using Verizon, or in the government side, filing your taxes with the IRS. They use ID.me, right? So again, it's just investing in these young veterans. And the reality of it is when I tell people, Wharton, et cetera, most small businesses in America will fail. They'll fail quick within 2 years. They will never make $1 million of revenue. I found the companies that are still successful, that are doing great, and so I have that entrepreneurial spirit. But part of it is I'm trying to guide people on what they could do to succeed if that's where the heart is, and that's what they want to do, and that's their, frankly, their new mission, their new purpose.
Yeah, and imparting that wisdom and stuff on that end, and helping mentor them through that. That's, and that's where I see you had that teaching point. Well, I mean, geez, the youngest professor over at West Point, but now you're at Wharton Business School, which is, I mean, there's no slouch there. To be part of that crew, it says something, and to be able to be a voice or be a teacher and lead that next generation along, it says a lot.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we joke that there's 850 new students every year at Wharton, full-time students. So it's a 2-year program. But like I said, about 9-10% are veterans or former government employees. But we joke that we make more billionaires than any other business school in the world, right? And when I teach, I'm usually teaching in Huntsman Hall, and it's named after John Huntsman, who was a World War II veteran, right? And so, like, I let people know, and most folks don't know that, and then when I teach them, I used to tell them about one of their predecessors was a guy, Alex Skorsky, who was a West Point guy, Army Ranger, went to Wharton, and then worked for Janssen and then Johnson Johnson, right? And he was the CEO of Johnson Johnson, which is the largest healthcare company in the world. And he's just a great American, always gives back. But like, you got to show them what right looks like. These young men and women go on to do phenomenal things, and just let them know what they can do and believe in them, and then kind of guide them, right? They have questions like anybody else, but if they're willing to take the time to make themselves better, I want to make the time to help them where I can.
Yeah, leading by example, leading from the front. A lot of the same exact stuff that I was imparted in the service, and
Yeah.
really why we're here today.
Yeah, well, it's an honor for me to be on with you, man. I appreciate what you do.
So, through all of this and everything, what would be your advice to somebody who's trying to get involved in civic engagement, trying to get involved within their communities, and whether it's politics or just being involved within your community, making a difference? Um, what's the advice of Patrick Murphy coming?
Well, I'd say a couple things. One, follow your passion, right? If you're passionate like about political public service, get active. Whether you have to be a candidate or just behind the scenes, but if it's in political public service, it's one vote, right? And most veterans are independents, right? And like in Pennsylvania, like one of the things I work on is like of our 1.3 million. So in Pennsylvania, we have 12 million people. Of our 12 million, 1.3 million are independents. Of our 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania, again, a majority are independents, right? And allowing them to vote in primary elections, like right now, they can't vote in primary elections, right? So if I'm an independent, if I like a candidate, I should be able to vote in a Republican or a Democratic, primary. Um, and right now they're closed, right? And so now, listen, if you're a Democrat, you should be able to vote in a Republican primary or vice versa. But like, if you're independent, you should be able to vote. You're still a tax-paying citizen and all that stuff. So, that's one of the programs that I'm working on because, and in a lot of states that isn't. So it goes back to what I said earlier, though. If you're a veteran that wants to get involved in political public service, what are some of the pain points? Yes, there's not enough veterans serving, right? But are they doing enough for our brothers and sister veterans? Could they do more?
Yeah,
Whatever you could do to kind of help out and, kind of, like I said, lead by example and be part of the solution. Don't show up and be like, hey, I'm a veteran, I'm ready to solve all the problems, right? But like you figure it out, do your homework, show up, be professional, and whether it's a part-time thing or eventually full-time, just get after it. I mean, there's 600,000 elected positions in America,
yeah.
and Congress, yeah, there's 535, but there's a whole heck of a lot more in school boards and city councils and state reps like that are out there. There's opportunities.
It's get involved. It's really
Yeah.
the same thing. I'm in a county in Maryland to where the veteran suicide rate in my particular county is the highest. So I started reaching out and started talking. Got linked in with the government officials on that end, and this particular county actually has a veterans commissioner dealing with that specific problem, trying to build up the veteran community. And that was a raise your hand and say, hey, all right, what do you need? Where can I help? This is what I'm doing here. But is there something where I can come and speak on? And I've been to multiple speaking things to where I don't publicize it or put it out there, but you'd be surprised on how much of a difference that makes. You know, the people that either show up to this to support whatever in there, and then hearing from an actual veteran, they become really invested in there, and they really want to understand the other veterans. They want to understand the problem, and put it, you know, either being a face out there, you know, and stepping forward, doing something, anything. Like, I'm sure that there's a problem that anyone can think of. You're like, all right, so start working on it, start thinking about it. And if you don't know the right way forward, talk to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why, like, I don't know if you know, I chair this new initiative. It's called the Face to Fight Initiative. So people can find out about it. It's called wefacetofight.org. So the
Okay.
Face to Fight Initiative is really a private sector led initiative that and veteran homelessness. I'm sorry, and veteran suicide, right? And sometimes they go hand in glove. But you know, we've lost over 125,000 of our brother and sister veterans since 9/11, like 10x
Mm.
what we lost to combat, right? And so you know, what more can we do? And let them know, like, hey, listen, this is a solvable problem. You can make a difference, right? And just knowing, one, that there should be no stigma on going to counseling. So people go to wefacetofight.org. It tells you how you can better interact with veterans or what you could do. But also, you know, we're trying to get rid of that stigma, and we help local organizations, you know, get after it and do what they can. And so we've raised about $80 million to date. Reach Resilience is a phenomenal nonprofit out there that's helping lead the charge, including Humana and USAA. But we have over 200 partners. And so I'd say if you're listening to this, you personally or your company, at whatever level, it's free. But like, you know, go to wefacetofight.org and find out about it and be part of the solution.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put that in the links for sure. I mean, that sounds that's a great thing. That's awesome. As far as the current political climate and everything, I wasn't going to actually ask this up until like this was not planned. This happened over the weekend and whatnot, but the current pick for SecDef, any advice for him? Because I know there's a little bit of a different opposing and everything else, but you've been there. You've been within there. Like, is there anything that you could offer as advice on that end?
Yeah, well, a couple things. Listen, you know, I'm a Democrat, right? It's called Blue Dog Democrat, a conservative Democrat. But you know, whenever you have a change in power, you know, obviously the Democrats had the White House. They just lost. Um, Unfortunately, when the new people come in, it's always, well, everything they did was bad. And all their people are bad. It's like, no, that's not the case. We're all Americans, right? So for me, the people are like, well, Pete Hegseth has never served in the Pentagon. You know, he's never been a member of Congress. He's too young. Like, it's like, I was on Fox and Friends this weekend. I was on CNN last week. And I just said, hey, listen, for folks who are jamming up Pete Hegseth that say he's too young, he's 44. And President Kennedy picked a 44-year-old combat veteran named Robert McNamara, who never had Pentagon experience,
Yep.
who became the longest serving Secretary of Defense in our nation's history. So I disagree with Pete on political issues, on some issues, right? But I don't question his love of country and his love for our troops. So, you know, that's going to shake out and, you know, Senate confirmation hearings, et cetera. But I think people should give him a fair chance, and you know, elections have consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I feel kind of the same way there with it's again, it's kind of cool to see the amount of veterans being called in on this, which is great. You know, it's
Yep.
it goes back to what we talked about before. We're willing to sit down and actually tackle the issue. It's not like a personal end of things, but okay, you know, we both served in the 82nd Airborne, and we understand that it's we all came from that was their heritage. They come from
Yep.
all parts of the country to make up, you know, what is all American, and it's kind of the it's our differences that really make us stronger all together. We can each learn from each other in so many different ways, and it's better together. This division doesn't need to be something that tears apart. It's something that can actually work in favor for all of us.
Yeah, people forget our military. I mean, we're 44% people of color in our military currently, right? So it's like we're more diverse than America, right? And the great thing about our military is that we're a meritocracy. That you know, you will go up in rank if you earn it, right? It's you know you the the you know the future favors the bold, right? And so it's folks that are willing to put their life on the line and do what's necessary. And you know, frankly do God's work and live, with the values that we all know, which is, leadership, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. They're the 7 core values of everyone that serves in uniform. And we got to make sure that we're living, by that example and by those values.
Yeah, and imparting that to others. I mean, we're
Yeah.
really trying to make the world a better place. That's where I feel that purpose is inside of us. Is we're trying to be part of something. We're trying to advance. We're
Yeah.
trying to be better as a human race, or as a humanity. So speaking of better and going back, we talked in the very beginning about this stuff through Yahoo Finance. But do you want to get me? I know this is like your current passion on there, but give me a little bit more of a rundown. Or maybe a quick lesson for people that might be listening in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a big believer in, like, in the media, and that the media can be a force multiplier for good or bad, right? So, I spent years now teaching at the Wharton Business School of starting companies and investing in companies, and seeing good, bad, or indifferent, right? And for me, to go out there and be able to provide a free service through Yahoo Finance to let people know how they could make their money work for them through our new podcast, Warrior Money. And it's, again, you could find us on all the all the networks, all the channels, YouTube, etc. But we had these great Americans as guests. We had people like Admiral Bill McRaven, talking about what it was like. Now he's at Lazard Bank, which is one of the biggest investment banks in the world, right? And he talks about, like, people want to make sure he can solve problems and what he's bringing to the table, and why he wrote the book, Make Your Bed, why he had the opportunity to lead the University of Texas, system as a chancellor, right? So all those type of things, we get with great guests. This week happens to be, a great, female former armor officer, where she was a great captain in armor, and then she got out of the military and went to Harvard Business School, and she's now the chief strategy officer for Gotham Football Club that won the world championship. So, I love the connection with veterans in sports and professional sports specifically. I used to work for the Philadelphia 76ers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Phillies, and I'm on the board of the Philadelphia Flyers Warriors. And I say those things because, to me, sports can be unifying in our country, right? I'm always trying to say, follow the things that are going to unite our country, not divide us, right? So yeah, listen, it was political season, it's over, but let's get on with it. Let's do more. And you mentioned civics earlier. It's one of those things that we also do. The National Civics Beat I was at last week that I could talk about if you'd like.
Oh yeah, why not go into it?
So right now in America, when you look at the polling, most Americans can't name the 3 branches of government. Okay, executive, legislative, judicial. And I don't want to bore them with a civics lesson, but how can we do better with civic engagement to renew the American spirit, especially going into 2 years from now will be our 250th anniversary of our country.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, I'm partnering with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Civics Bee, or what's called the Civic Trust, to get 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to compete. So a lot of people see on ESPN, you have the spelling bees, right? We're now creating civic bees, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So we're in 28 states. We're going to be in all 50 states. It's free for schools. It's free for students. And what we're asking is schools to sign up through the National Civics Bee. To sign up, you can take a test, but be part of the process and host a competition. And then we give prizes. So we just had the national competition last week. We gave $100,000 prize to the winner. Number 2 got 50,000. I'm sorry, 25,000. Number 3 got 15,000. Right, but it's not about the money. It's about getting these young Americans engaged, and then their parents will learn about it too. Right, so civics is incredibly important, especially when you look at the upcoming anniversary. You look at the fact that we've invested a lot in STEM, which is positive, but less in civics, and we need to get back to our basics as all Americans, so we can combat the disinformation and combat people who don't want to believe in the greatest country in the world, and that's the United States of America.
Absolutely. The fact that too that, I mean, really technology can work for us, but it has led to a little bit of a disconnect in the way to where somebody is going down that hole, and that personal connection, that connection to our kids, or that connection to our wife, spouse, girlfriend, whoever, somebody across the table from us. How many times do you go into a restaurant and you see just everybody looking down at their phone?
Right.
to where it's, we've become a little bit disconnected from it. But I do think that people are realizing that, and the up and coming generation is starting to put that to the side and starting to say, hey, look, like, we want this personal connection. And that's awesome that you're doing that with this program.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredibly needed. And listen, I'm raising two kids, a senior in high school and a freshman in high school. And, we have a rule that we don't have phones at the dinner table, that we, go to church every Sunday, that we say, please and thank you. When people come in the room, you stand up and you greet them, or if they're leaving, and just I make them make their bed every morning. Like, right. So little things like that are important, but if you weren't raised that way, you think it's a big deal, and then we try to show them the stats of like, hey, you make your bed, it's like the snowball effect, right? It's the one thing you accomplish, and then if you go work out, that's another thing you accomplish, right? And then there's always time to be on your phone or to do what you need to do, but you got to make the time that things are important. Those little wins throughout the day can build up and really snowball and create greatness.
Yeah, and those small improvements over time, it doesn't come all at once. People don't ever take that into effect. They see someone at this high level, and it's like, no, there was steps. There was a lot of steps along that way.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. People ask me all the time, like, I've been so lucky, but part of it was, when I was at community college full time, I was still working three jobs, right? And then when I went to a regular college, and then joining the army, like, I was still working because my first year I didn't have the scholarship yet, right? So, um, and then, I got commissioned as an army officer, and then eventually the army company used to go to law school. But, then again, that was on my own dime. They didn't pay for it, right? So, I mean, I was given plasma. I was working 25 hours a week, which is the max you could do. And then I was given plasma on the side, right? Because I was just trying to get by. I wasn't independently wealthy, and it was on me. So, and I'm not complaining about it, but our country is this land of opportunity if you're willing to take it and work hard at it, and not just work hard. Well, it's working smart, and that's what we're doing to pay forward through this, Warrior Money podcast and elsewhere.
So, if there's anything that you want to leave the listeners with on the end towards working through their own path to success, whichever whatever that might look like for them, maybe even something that you could go back and tell yourself at the beginning of everything, what would that be?
I think part of it is like, go, and if you have a role model and say, hey, I want to be this person in 10 years or 20 years, how did they get there? And then reverse plan it out, right? And ask people for advice. People are willing to give you advice. Uh, you know, follow up on things like LinkedIn. Folks like me. If I'm at Patrick J Murphy, connect on LinkedIn, social media. On social media, I'm at Patrick Murphy PA. But those things that are out there that are available, people would need to understand that you got to plan your work and then work your plan. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of discipline. Uh, but if you work hard and work smart, you can get there, right? And there's organizations and brothers and sisters out there that are willing to help you. So if you're a transitioning veteran, and there's again 200,000 that transition every year, there's things like Hiring Your Heroes, which is a great nonprofit with the Chamber of Commerce, that they do these career summits all these military bases throughout the world. They go there and it's free. It's free for companies, so that you can sign up if you're a company, if you're a transitioning veteran or a military spouse, you can show up and get a free headshot. You can get briefed on how to have a better resume. We have this thing called the resume engine, and then you can do one-on-one interviews with corporate America to find out about their industry and find out about making connections. um, those things are important, but you got to put yourself out there, right? You got to take the time to go do that. And that's why, like, I devoted my life to helping my brothers and veterans. But it's not just like to be a cheerleader. It's about giving them concrete advice and opportunity so they can continue to do great things, because they are civic assets. So the one piece of advice is, we are not victims. I see the commercials, for only $19 should help these poor veterans. We are civic assets. In fact, our veterans are more likely to be employed now than non-veterans. They're more likely to vote in elections no matter what their political persuasion is. They're more likely to start a small business and for that small business to be successful, right? We are civic assets, and we got to amplify our brother and sister veterans when they're doing right. So whether it's my podcast or Jack Carr or other veterans that are out there, stop trying to tear each other down. Let's build each other up, because as the great Ben Franklin said in Philadelphia once, if we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately. So we got a lot of work to do.
I don't think I could have ended that any other better way right there, man. Congressman Murphy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, I
really
appreciate it.
appreciate you taking the time. Hang tight, and we'll talk right after this. I
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
Airborne.
All the way. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Veteran Success Story. We always try to bring forward a guest that has something to offer and something to hopefully inspire or help other veterans through some of the difficulties or the path that they're on right now. It's through creating this in a long form format where we hope to be a force multiplier and get to guests or get information that possibly people wouldn't have access to otherwise. Make sure that you check the description links within the episode, as there's going to be just a multitude of information and really what is the gold that Patrick Murphy offers through this episode and everything that he's doing throughout his life and in the veteran community. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm sorry for the technical glitches at the very end there. It's something that we're working on along the way, but we hope that you got some value out of the episode. I know I did, and I hope you join us for yet another episode of Veteran Success Story.